There can be no more important study, no higher duty owed to ourselves and those about us than this of thought control results in self-development. A statement made by Orison Swett Martin, who I just discovered today was actually a medical doctor himself. And he is the founder of the very popular Success magazine, which is still going today. And as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of our introduction, mentioned that it's so important for us to understand the spiritual and mental aspects. And from this diagram, you can see at the very, very top of what we call our central governing system. And what does that mean? It simply means that the three main systems in our body, the nervous system right here, the endocrine system, and the immune system, actually control our other 60 to 100 trillion cells. And that the key to health is to ensure that these systems work. But an even greater key than that is actually our thoughts and our feelings, our emotions, how we handle stress, for instance. This system, the mind and the emotions, control all the others. And so if you are talking about health, and all you do is focus on just your body cells or just your immune system or your endocrine system or even your nervous system, and you do not pay attention to how you think or how you feel, well then a lot of the work you'll be doing will be in vain. And that is why we are so grateful that to have an honor, really, to have Ken Coscia come on again. He did a presentation about a month ago on navigating uncertainty, and he's back again to talk about how to stay calm, healthy, and focused, even under pressure. So it is indeed an honor. And I'm going to ask Sherry to introduce Mr. Ken as we go on into the presentation.
Okay. Ken Coscia is the founder and president of KCTI, an international training coaching company dedicated to enhancing the quality of people's lives. Ken earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a focus on managerial psychology and has collaborated with many of the pioneering leaders in the mind-body sciences. He has 38 years of highly respected experience in creating, designing, and delivering personal and professional development programs. Ken skillfully adjusts program content and presentation to meet the diverse and unique needs of individuals and organizations throughout the United States, Canada, Australia, Europe, and the Far East. He is a passionate, results-oriented training consultant with a broad range of professional skills. Ken Coscia and his work has been a subject of discussion throughout the media internationally. He was a contributor to the St. Francis Care Today program with Dr. Ed Johnson on sleep disorders. Ken also serves as the International Training Director for Silva International, a personal development organization with centers in over 118 countries. Ken may be giving us his web address, but I'll go ahead and just mention it. He's got a couple of websites, the first one being silvamethodct.com and the other one, kencoscia.com. Ken, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, David. And thank you, listeners, for being here with us. I'm thrilled to be back, and thank you very much for your kind words with that. Tonight, folks,
well, we appreciate you coming on.
Me too. You know, it's interesting. This is a topic, David. I was listening to you in some of the references in the beginning. This is one of those topics that everybody acknowledges they need, and yet everybody feels like they've been there, done that, if you know what I mean. Stress, dealing with stress. So tonight, what I'd like to do is kind of be as practical as possible. And tonight, for our listeners, I'm going to share with you some of the keys to staying healthy, staying calm, staying productive and balanced, even under pressure or in trying times. And what you'll discover with me tonight is how you can naturally, easily increase your productivity, lower your medical costs by reducing your stress levels, staying focused, staying positive and motivated, being more creative in your ability to solve problems, and more importantly, overcome limiting belief systems that are preventing you from being your very best. I really appreciate these webinars that David and Sherry are presenting to you because they are just so chock full of information, supportive information. And if you've been attending many of them, you're probably noticing that there are definitely common denominators. Different perspective, perhaps, different way of explaining it. But there are more and more what we're discovering, universal truths. The best part is you can do all these things. It almost sounds too good to be true. You can do them by simply changing the way you think and the way you feel about things, as David was so eloquently saying earlier. And tonight I'd like to show you how and point you in the direction. If you'd like to take it to the next level, I'll show you how you can do that or make some suggestions, recommendations. And if I may just say, I was explaining to David and to Sherry earlier that this presentation, usually I'm working from, say, 9 in the morning to 4 or 5 o'clock. It's an all-day program. And knowing that we're going to be about 90 minutes, we're aiming for about, to respect the hour for those of us who are that. So I'm going to go through and spend as much time as we can and periodically take a look at some aspects that we can bring it to life so that you can walk away from this program tonight with something practical and useful. So that being said, we talk about how you think, how you feel. And I'd like you to just think for a moment about things in your life, some of the challenges you're facing, some of the people that you interact with on a daily basis. And I think we could all agree that, you know, life is what it is, and even the most fortunate of men and women experience setback, challenges, problems, uncertainties. It's just the way it is and the way it's always been. Some of these things are within our control. Many of them are not. But the one thing that is we can control, truly, and this is the key, is how we perceive it. That's our key to unlock a complex cascading of neurochemicals, hormonal changes, chemicals all throughout the body. And that chemical, it's not just in your head. It's not just a thought thing. It's not just, you know, be positive. We know that our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions affect our physiology. And as a result, it affects not just our health, our immune system, also our performance, whether we make a mistake or have an accident. So I like to use the expression, when you change your point of view, you change your life. And if you were with me in the navigating uncertainty, I'm going to use some of the same, I hope you find them, humorous slides that people have shared with me. I travel around the world literally doing advanced presentations within the Silva organization. I serve as their international trainer, which means I train professionals to do what we do, in addition to working with the public and organizations. And it's interesting, I feel so blessed because I love my work. I'm self-employed. It's my own business, you know, the business side. And yet too often I hear people describe to me how they dread Sundays. I said, what? And they dread Sundays because tomorrow's Monday and they've got to go back into, you know, it's like swimming with the sharks or back to that rat race or what have you. When somebody sent me this, I'd be like this for a change of point of view. Some people have expressed to them Monday morning, this is what it feels like. I thought that was just a very powerful metaphor for, wow, I mean, how would you like to be jumping into a beach loaded with alligators or crocodiles, and you have no control. If you look, the parachute has got some holes in it, and he's losing altitude real quick. And if I dare to say this, and I mean no disrespect, that's purely a perception. That's purely a perception in people's minds. And what I'd like to invite you to do throughout this presentation in the hopes of making it as practical as possible is think of people who you know who handle adversity. Think about people we say, oh, they're like ducks. It just rolls off their back. And you begin to observe their patterns. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. They think differently. They perceive the world, and they relate to the same adversities, to the same difficulties, the same people. They may not like it. They may even dislike it intensely. It's not a question of airy-fairy, oh, yeah, I love everything. It's a question of how we perceive it and look at it. So let's continue. What we're talking about is self-awareness. Self-awareness is considered to be the foundation for psychological health and well-being. Self-awareness has been considered to be taking responsibility, or the beginning of taking responsibility for our lives, instead of pointing the finger, at our mother, our father, our siblings, my boss. I mean, do you know anybody like that? Where they seem to have a pattern that everybody abuses them, or they've been victimized. And there's a whole history there. Again, I mean no disrespect, because I know that sometimes life is downright difficult. And there are people in the world who we have to interact with who are not so positive or so caring or whatever. That's not the point. The point is nobody can make us think and feel anything that we choose not to. And I know that sounds, it's accurate when you know how to do it. So the distinction is, if we don't understand that, if we lack the self-awareness, then that becomes like Mission Impossible. If you saw the movie The Secret, if we were able to take a survey, I'm sure of our listeners, some would say, oh, I loved it, it was inspiring. And others walked away saying, too good to be true. I've heard both sides, some people even feeling very discouraged and put off by it because they felt like it simplified it. It made it seem like, oh, yeah, all I have to do is close my eyes and want this and want that. What was missing was specifics on how to do that. So first step, understanding stress, the progression, some of the early warning signs, the risks of it. Second, we want to be able to identify and distinguish, each of us, our own individual stressors. There are minor stresses, triggers, and the major stresses, guilt, grief, loss, hating something or someone, especially our job, because typically we're there so often. Where the minor triggers might be traffic jams, unpaid bills, although I don't know if that's really minor, but some would argue that, changes, uncertainties, making a move, a new job, children leaving the family, children coming back. And then third, we want to transform that stress to serve us. And that really is a skill, and there is a technology behind that. And that, for many people who are well-meaning, may find what's missing is, how do I actually go about that? So let's continue. So again, tonight, in our less than 90 minutes now together, we're going to take a look at some different aspects. You ever see this cartoon? I've got Lucky Rabbit's Foot, Lucky Coin, Four-Leaf Clover. You know the type? Problem is, none of them become effective till I do. I could relate that to people who go to every webinar, read every book, have all sorts of CD programs. Again, with due respect, we call them seminar junkies. They're the people who say, yeah, been there, done that. Intellectually, they have it. I didn't get to hear the presentation about the heart-brain connection, although I've been studying that for at least the past half dozen years. It's fascinating, because it's one thing to know something, it's another thing to integrate it. It's one thing to intellectually study something, have all the information and the self-awareness. It's an entirely different thing altogether to be able to integrate it, embrace it, and utilize it, which is what it's all about. So, folks listening, please be patient with yourself. Allow yourself the opportunity to know it's not a quick fix. And if anybody tells you that it's a quick fix, they're oversimplifying, you should put up a red flag. It takes time. And not a whole lot of time, but it does take as little as 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. So let's continue. Some of the early warning signs, if I may, just briefly. How in the world can we tell that our stress levels are building? You may remember, I know on the Building Strength webinars, there's a reference to Dr. Hans Selye. He's known as the granddaddy of stress management. Way back in the early 1900s, he defined stress as an unspecified response to change. Now, if you think about the changes we're all experiencing, it could be having a mortgage payment. It could be paying off the mortgage. They're both changes, and they both will change our body chemistry. It could be the joy of a new baby into the household, but it's still a stressor. It could be the children growing up and leaving the house, and they're on their own, and that's, a celebration, but it's also there is a sense of grief, a loss, temporary. It could be a new job, an incredible increase in pay, a promotion. It's a change. It could be a demotion or a loss of job, of a friendship. So these things that we deal with, it could be unexpected bills, unexpected traffic jams, a leaky roof, appliances breaking down, life. So how can we tell? We have adaptive mechanisms, Celia found, and our body is very resilient. As human beings are very, very resilient. However, that resilience gets tested with all these stressors. So some of the warning signs, emotionally speaking, would be feeling angry, impatient, fearful, feeling bored, anxiety, and not explaining the anxiety, an inability to cope or an inability to laugh or cry, and we feel like crying. Some of the physical symptoms, constant fatigue, shortness of breath, nervous energy. In addition to that, some of the physical symptoms would be an increase in the use of alcohol, caffeine, chocolate, tobacco. We all laugh. In the love story, someone's healing a broken heart. They've had a negative experience with their mate, with their lover. And where's the chocolate? Where's the chocolate ice cream? All these things stimulate the pleasure centers in the brain. And by our very nature, we seek pleasure and we avoid pain. So they're tied in. Things like caffeine, chocolate, especially dark chocolate, tobacco, nicotine in the tobacco, will stimulate the production of dopamine and serotonin, which are feeling good enzymes. So you can see, if we lack self-awareness, it's not the caffeine, a cup of coffee, a glass of wine here or there, piece of chocolate here or there. It's when it becomes excessive, when it becomes mindless. If we were to stop and pay attention to what's behind the craving and explore what's behind the craving, we would have a much, much better handle on these addictions that so easily we as a people can fall victim to. And stress or stressors, as they build up, are a common cause of this. So if we look at the brain, there are three major centers of the brain, and I just noticed on the slide, from the neocortex, in the middle you can see the line, should be the limbic system, and it disappeared, but it's there in space somewhere, and the reptilian center. So we know that these three major centers, and it's the reptilian that's the oldest part of the brain. It's got millions of years, and a lot of our reactions to life, if we lack self-awareness, this primitive part of the brain seems to take over. Again, look at Dr. Andrew Newberg's work, along with Mark Robert Waldman, How God Changes Your Brain, Why We Believe What We Believe, or Born to Believe, and some of their work as neuroscientists in recent years, helping us to understand this. Now I'll come back, but more importantly, let's just look briefly at some of the physiology of stress, and then we'll get ready for some practical aspect. For example, we know that as stresses build up, this is, again, unspecified response to change in the body. So a reaction, there's a trigger. So one of the things that happens is cortisone is from the adrenal glands, which is a messenger to the skin, muscle, bone, and the lymph system to find protein for the liver, to then produce sugar. When it becomes excessive is when we begin to compromise our immune system, and it's also why there is a direct connection between diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and lack of exercise, too much sugar, and stress. And throughout the past 30 years, it's been very well documented that practicing with proven relaxation techniques, we can literally help to stabilize and normalize cortisone, blood sugar levels, etc. We know that the thyroid hormone will increase in the bloodstream. There's a release of endorphins from the hypothalamus. There's a reduction of the sex hormone. It's not uncommon when people are feeling stressed out. They lose that natural urge. There's a shutdown of the digestive tract. We've all heard the old adage, never eat while you're arguing or if you're feeling stressed, because the digestive tract, and we get indigestion because the digestive tract shuts down. There's a release of blood sugar into the blood. Blood thickens. Cholesterol levels increase. Skin pales, sweats. Hair may even stand up. Racing heartbeat. Senses become more acute. And what all this translates into is premature fatigue, aging, premature aging, quickness to anger. We become less effective, less productive. We're more susceptible to disease because our immune systems become suppressed. We're more susceptible to bacterial and viral infections. We're more apt to make a mistake. Just think about it. When you're stressed, worried, are you not more apt to forget something? When you're excessively stressed or worried, are we not more apt to have an accident? When we're stressed or worried, are we not more apt to leave something out that typically we know? And that's why many professions have insurance for that called errors of omission. That profession, we're expected to do certain things, and it's considered negligence if we're not doing our job. Now, we could go on and on, with that. I know you get the idea, and we've all heard so much about stress, building up. So let me go back to this idea of the power of a thought. And you've heard so many individuals say something very similar, that change how you think, change how you feel about those triggers, about those experiences in life, and we can transform that stress and prevent it from becoming distress. So it's not the doing, it's the excessive thinking. Our brain, we know, is like a computer. Neuroscience has told us time and time again in recent years, if we think about something long enough and repeat it, and the more intense it is, eventually we begin to believe it, and eventually our brain, they believe particularly in the thalamus, begins to accept it as if it were true. So you can see how that can be our best friend or our worst enemy. May I ask you, again, I'm not able to see your face in this platform, but what do we mean? It's the excessive thinking. Have you ever sat down in the morning facing a very busy day, a packed schedule, and you stop for a few minutes and think and worry, how will I do it? Can I do it? And guaranteed, after 2-3 minutes, if that, of worrying about the busy day, most people say, when I say, how do you feel? Tired, in need of a nap, exhausted. We didn't do a blessed thing. So the thought is really the software, and our emotions is the software that drives the computer that causes the release of all those chemicals we talked about before. Thought produces change and feeling. So the actual experience is an actual experience of vivid imagination. If you were with us in the Navigating Uncertainty presentation, remember we did that lemon exercise? Now I know many of our listeners perhaps were not. So if I may just repeat it, imagine you've cut up some wedges of lemon. You're holding a piece in your hand, smelling it. Can you remember what the lemon looks like? Its size and shape, the fragrance. That's it. Bring it up to your nose. Just play along with me. That's it. Very good. Can you smell it? Now put it in your mouth and suck on it. That's it. Chew it. If you're salivating, if you're tasting it or smelling it, several possibilities. In a sense, you fooled your brain. You know in your consciousness you're just playing along, it's just a thought. However, in the thalamus it doesn't make those kinds of distinctions, and the more vivid the imagination. Some would also suggest, in part, it has to do with cellular memory. That if you've ever had the experience of eating a lemon and having that experience, you have that memory stored in your body, and just the thought, just thinking about it, is like a key causing us to unlock that memory, to trigger it, a trigger like a light switch, and our body produces the same chemical changes as if we were actually eating the lemon. It's a brilliant point. It's what some have referred to as the law of attraction or the law of attention. that whatever you give attention to, you give energy to. Whatever you give energy to will grow and magnify. Whatever grows and magnifies, we begin to produce. So we need to be very guarded and careful to stay focused on what we want, to stay focused on our goals. I mean, worry is like a rocking chair. Gives us something to do, but it gets us nowhere. Same thing you could say with dreams. It's a classic example. If you've ever had a nightmare, people wake up from a nightmare, and for those few brief moments, it seems so real. What's going on in your body, physiologically speaking? Perhaps breathing heavy, heart racing, perspiring. And yet we didn't do anything but think about it. Once we wake up and say, it's just a dream, then of course we calm down. The power of a thought. Guys, if you just take this one thing home with you, if you just begin to apply it and spend some time in studying this and practicing this aspect, you will notice a very, very noticeable difference, a profound difference. It can be your best friend. So I just flashed up on the screen the ideal place of relaxation. And I want to teach you this, and it's something that you can easily access. So based on everything we're talking about and the power of a thought, this is something, by the way, in the Silva program I started back in 1971, actually almost 39 years. I was blessed to meet Dr. Jose Silva. It's my modality of choice, although I am diverse in my understanding of different modalities. And he spent 22 years looking at things like hypnosis, meditation, positive thinking, biofeedback. In the recent years, we continue to research looking at what's going on in neuroscience. It's become known as the mind-body connection. There's some wonderful people out there doing some incredible research. Well, one of the techniques we teach in what we call the Silva Life System seminar, where we talk about staying calm, staying relaxed, how to transform stress into your best friend, so to speak, how not to let life's challenges get the best of you. Now, please understand that there are quite a few aspects to the technology. This is one part, an important part, and it's very easy for you to duplicate. And the reason why I want to bring it to your attention is this. If you've ever gone to a stress management program, there are some brilliant, and I mean brilliant, presentations, intellectually speaking. It's called cognitive thought therapy. In fact, traditional talk therapy is a cognitive function in helping people to think differently. Long story short, if we go back to the brain, the front part of the brain, the executive center, has a lot to do with higher thinking functions, frontal lobes. And cognition is the seat of cognition. It's the seat of higher thinking functions. Well, interestingly enough, if you're in an organization or a business, when I've worked with some of my clients and we're talking about putting together a stress management program like this to their people, one of the first objections is, hey, we've done this. We've spent a small fortune. People go through these trainings and they come back Monday and nothing changes. And the reason being is, if that stress management program, as most traditional ones, rely on cognitive shifts, which are brilliant, they really don't work when you are stressed out, because if we become overwhelmed with stress, as the distress builds up in the body, as the neurochemistry and the body chemistry changes, it causes blood vessels to constrict. As the blood vessels constrict, there is a diminishing of the flow of blood to the brain and oxygen to the brain, which is vital for the health and for the functioning of the brain. Please, I'm just going to oversimplify it. I don't pretend to be a physician or a neuroscientist, but this is the gist of it. And the first thing that goes is cognition. If you read Dr. Goldman's work on emotional intelligence, he has his own terminology. He's from Harvard as a psychologist and talking about this. The first thing that goes, and people can't think, they go into what I call the duh mode. And they sit for 10, 20 minutes, can't even think, focus, and all of a sudden look at their watch and say, where's everything gone? Have you ever been there? It's like the last thing we can do when we're overwhelmed like that is think, is cognitively make a perception shift, reframe, or what have you. We really need something. It's essential. I urge you, if you're concerned about stress levels, the only way antidote is that we've got to have something that requires little or no thought, that can be a trigger that happens automatically, that's built in as a resource, built in already, that just a simple gesture, a simple thought can trigger it. So for example, think of a place where you've been. You can make one up. Ideally, in the beginning, it seems to be more effective and more powerful. A place where you find very relaxing. You've actually been there many times. It could be soaking in the tub, nice music, some candles, sipping a nice glass of wine. It could be walking on the beach on a beautiful Caribbean island. It could be in the mountains. It could be fishing. It could be walking through the woods. It doesn't matter. Something, or maybe enjoying a favorite book by the crackling fireplace. Something that indeed, in actuality, when you're there, physically speaking, is relaxing and calming and energizing for you. So please think of one. Ideally, you'll have several. You don't need to have several, but it's good to have several. For example, I love the beach. I love walking, running on the beach. And I thought that'd be very relaxing, and it is. I find for me, though, being in a wooded situation by a babbling brook, a small stream, nobody there, quiet, where you can, I have found that to be, for me, far more relaxing. The point is, you have built in, at a cellular level, a memory. And all you need to do is access that. So we call it the ideal place of relaxation. That's part of the technology. So therefore, if you're in a heated discussion, if you're driving and nearly have an accident, or you're in a traffic jam, or you're looking at that busy schedule, and you're starting to feel overwhelmed, starting to get pent up, all you have to do is just pause, literally pause, for 5, 10, 15, 30 seconds. Eyes open or closed. If it's appropriate and safe, close your eyes, because it makes it easier. You're tuning out the light. And there's other reasons why it's easier. As if you were there, and describe to yourself that place of relaxation. I would ask you, as long as you are by your computer, safe, and not operating heavy machinery or driving a car, I would ask you, if you're not doing this already, allow yourself to close your eyes. And just think of that place. Regain access. Imagine, what would it be like, what would it feel like if you were at this ideal place of relaxation? Would you hear anything? Would there be any aroma? What's the temperature like? What are the surrounding circumstances? And you do this periodically. When you're not overwhelmed, you do this for practice. And what we call it is you're creating a resource state of relaxation based on, like I said, a real experience you've had. And your key is your thought, your desire, your simple desire to think of that ideal place. So now tomorrow you're at work, you're on the phone, you're dealing with people, you're maybe going to give a presentation. Maybe you're giving a recital, you're a musician or a singer. And before you go on stage, you can just pause, think of that place of relaxation, 30 seconds, and it's fascinating. Your body will begin to relax, and your body chemistry will begin to change and shift. And the quicker you get it, the easier it is for your body to respond. It does respond if you are overwhelmed. However, what I'm saying is if you can nip it in the bud. I'd like you to practice this, please, tonight, before you go to bed. I'd like you tomorrow, first thing. There's more to it, like I said. But the basis here is what we're talking about is our feelings, our thoughts affect the central nervous system, which in turn affects the brain. So those feelings, those thoughts are already embedded. We've already had that experience. It's already affected our nervous system and our brain. And all we're doing is, with our thought, desiring to, as if I'm there in my ideal place of relaxation. That's it. That's all it takes. You don't need to strategically plan. You don't need to make a cognitive shift. You don't need to, it's just, think of almost like a fantasy, if you will. And that causes, again, in a positive, a complex cascading of the neurochemicals. There's even a body of research to show that serotonin levels will increase in the body, blood sugar levels will reduce, cholesterol levels, even things like blood pressure. I have been so privileged. I love this work more because of the people I meet. And it's amazing to me. I have worked with tens of thousands of people. I coach fellow professionals. We have millions of people who have been through our programs, and the most common thing we hear from people is what I'm telling you, an improvement in their health, a lowering of their blood pressure, often to the point where they don't need the medication, a lowering of cholesterol levels, because they're practicing a dynamic form of meditation, which is what the ideal place of relaxation is part of the technology. If you've ever heard of things like TM or mindfulness meditation, they are fabulous techniques. They work. They're research-based for that. Our approach uses those same principles. However, we've added a dynamic aspect to it, and that's part of the brilliance that Dr. Jose Silva found with his work, that anything that distresses you conquers you, and that our thoughts, our emotions affect the stress levels. So every time you have a thought, you program your brain to take action on that thought. Let's summarize. Every time you have a thought, hundreds of thousands of your body cells begin to move in the direction of actualizing that thought. So again, the ideal place of relaxation is already embedded, integrated. You're having a thought, just simply desiring, and you have all this then working for you. Every time you have a thought, you create and change your baseline body chemistry. And again, the human body, the brain, particularly the thalamus, does not know the difference between a real or imagined experience. We know, again, in our consciousness, I'm talking with respect to, so to speak, programming levels. So again, this ideal place of relaxation, if you've closed your eyes, you can open them too, by the way, in case you have not. With that, let me just, oops, I just lost my, forgive me, something just changed in the controls. Let me see if I can go back. David or Sherry, can you help me? I'm not sure what's happening.
Are you trying to advance the slide?
Then all of a sudden they stopped. I don't know if it's me or my system or...
Could you...
So the person I was talking about, good reference to you. If you're not familiar with this person, she's one of my heroes, Dr. Candace Pert, who's a neuroscientist who for 20 years mapped the brain at NIH, National Institutes of Health. And way back when we're talking, she's no longer there. She left for a number of reasons. If you ever get a chance to hear her tell her story, she's very dedicated to health and well-being and helping people transform their lives. She was at, I would say, spearhead of this new emerging science of what's become known as cellular memory. More recently, we're hearing more about Dr. Bruce Lipton in his breakthrough work, The Biology of Belief. Dr. Lipton is a cellular biologist. Both of them have books that are readily available, well worth the read. The man I mentioned, who I've studied all these people with them, is Dr. Jose Silva, who started back in 1944, just to give him a little recognition. He's the founder of the Silva method, what's become now known as the mind-body-spirit connection, although we never called it that before. So this ideal place of relaxation is step one. Let's see if we can add on a little bit more here. So again, what am I saying? Anything that causes stress is known as a stressor. I want to go back to these three main stressors. And the significance being, I invite your attention to this, is because, again, it's really simple. It's just not always easy. And I know from a marketing point of view, maybe that's not a good thing to say, because you guys probably get all sorts of emails and marketing from all over the place. And you know as well as I do that it works, it's well-founded, but it takes time and it takes patience. So number one stressor would be guilt. I don't know who comes up with these figures, but these are based on studies. I wouldn't argue it, but I think we could all agree. Guilt from the point of view of, they say, deducts 10 to 15 years from the lifespan. I've not been able to find out who came up with that and based on what. I think, though, it's safe to agree that when we feel guilty about something, when we feel like we're doing something that's wrong, unethical, a moral dilemma, and we continue to do it, that's called guilt, that it's considered to be, as I've studied, a number one major stressor in our lives. For example, have you noticed in the business community that things have changed? Policies have changed. The way we do business has changed. Some of it very positive, some of it questionable. And some of us, from time to time, find ourselves in a situation that we feel is unethical, maybe even morally wrong, and it's not congruent with us. And we feel this tug of war inside. I will acknowledge that I went through this myself. I had a major client. It was, like I said, I'm diversified. I'm also a hypnotherapist, and I was doing work in this area. And I got to it, and because this client, what they were asking me to do was not sitting right and have integrity. And I became one of those guys, dreading it. I turned to my wife and Barbara, and I said, I can't believe it. I've become one of those guys that I used to feel compassion toward. Why? Because I was feeling so guilty about it. Since I let go of it, and I did, it's been a few years, it was like a relief. I'm like a new man. I feel like a burden taken off my shoulders. I feel more centered and happy. I've been more creative. And I'd like you to consider that yourself, too. If you find yourself in one of those dilemmas, I know we all need to pay the bills. It was a very big piece of business for me as a training consultant. But you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Because I was beginning to feel tired, excessive. I was beginning to show all the classic symptoms of distress building. And then, in the long run, it costs you more in medical bills. It costs you more in loss of productivity. It costs you more in the mistakes and the accidents. It costs you more in maybe, we lose control and we're impatient with our family, our friends, our loved ones. The second one is loss, meaning, and of course, losing someone or something that in our mind is irreplaceable. Someone or something that to us was so dear and near that they're irreplaceable. Grief. And too often, I remember I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and as a boy I come from a very strong Roman Catholic background of Italian heritage. And going to funerals and wakes was always an adventure. How the men would get together, boy, stiff upper lip, and boy, look how tough he is, this guy's aces. And I remember as a kid wanting to cry over the loss of a dear relative and being complimented by the guys how tough I was. And you know what happened? Shortly after that, I had it so bottled up, I became physically, violently ill for several days. And I would invite you to consider that distress builds up like a pressure cooker. And if we bottle it up, if we repress it and suppress it, if you want to experiment with this, get your pressure cooker, operate it, duct tape the valve, the release valve, and then run. And actually, folks, please do not do that because it's very dangerous. But it'll explode. You could do the same thing with the bottle. I do this in my classes. I do all these little, metaphors. Take a bottle of seltzer water, or a club soda, shake it up, and shake it up, hold it in. It's all bottled up. So we feel angry, we feel resentful, we have grief. And we don't allow ourselves the time to grieve, to heal, whether it takes a day, a week, a month, or 10 years. Too often we rush and we don't allow that time for the body to recover, for the mind. And if we don't, we become like a pressure cooker. We become like that bottle. Open it up, and what happens? It explodes, and it makes a mess. And we see the same thing with people, that they'll lose their cool, they'll lose their calm, and yell, scream, because they're so bottled up. It's a classic sign. Road rage, classic sign of people taking it out on others because they feel they can't trust anyone. People don't care. What's the world getting to? And on and on. And number 2 is loss. Number 3, as I mentioned earlier, hating your job. You know, this is old information. I was looking over some of the research, and you can do a Google on this. It was estimated 63% of Americans hate their work, suffer from this. I hear now that the figures are higher. Why? In this economic climate that we're all in, the profit margins are slimmer, the cutbacks are there, the threat of a loss of a job. If you're lucky to still have your job, you're being asked to what? Handle more responsibility, work longer hours, and maybe for less pay, for less money. And what happens is we begin to, if we're not careful, to build up feelings of resentment. We begin to hate our job. And often I find that is it that we really hate the job or we hate different aspects about it. In my opinion, my humble opinion, if we lose sight of the original mission of why we do what we do and we focus on what we don't like about our work, if we focus on a relationship and what we don't like about the relationship, if we focus on our friends and what we don't like about their behaviors, I don't mean to just ignore it and not seek some change and to resolve the conflict. No. If, however, that's all we think about and focus on, after a while we have selective memory. And I'm not making this up because attorneys see it all the time. People are traumatized in an accident or something horrible happened, and they selectively remember only what they want to because it's too painful to remember what actually happened. And if we're not careful, is what we think about, what we give attention to, what we focus on becomes real. And if all we do is focus on the aspects that we don't like and we resent it, all of a sudden we lose sight, literally, of the joy in it, the pleasure, the value, the benefit, what it does for us. And this has become very serious. You know, in fact, I love doing work for companies. I'd like to go into different companies. You could double your income. Master these 3 stressors, you'll double your income. You'll turn your business around. You'll have less medical costs because people won't get sick as much, which is going to save us all on our medical costs and our insurance because it keeps going up because America's become plagued with all these stress-related diseases. David mentioned conservatively 80%. Some argue that 70 to 90%, some might argue more, are stress-related. Not that they make believe, but because this stress as it builds up in the body, again, compromises the immune system and causes all those complex chemical changes in the body that basically make us more susceptible to disease. Even athletes in athletic performance. If you're a singer again, if you're an athlete, you're a salesperson. If you're stressed, if you're worried, if you're upset, what happens? You forget things. You don't perform as well. You're fatigued prematurely. You're not at your best. You're not in the zone. It's that simple. So again, that ideal place of relaxation is a way to help the healing. It doesn't make the pain of the loss go away. No, of course not. You know, they say time heals. Well, it helps us to tolerate it. It helps us to balance, if you will, and to regain that balance. It helps us to, dare I say, accelerate the healing so that we don't get so overwhelmed that we just feel helpless and hopeless. Helplessness and hopelessness is a precursor to clinical depression, which can become a precursor to serious things like suicide or dropping out. People say, we're all going to die, why bother? And it's become a serious problem in America, probably the world, because we see that there's an increasing use of antidepressants. And I'm not suggesting to throw them away. Do what you need to do. Work with your doctor. You've got an incredible panel on building on these webinars of people with information. What I am saying, though, is too often, if it's just the meds are a Band-Aid approach. If we don't get to the cause, if we don't get to what's triggering that, then we become addicted to the drug and the med. And most of these drugs and meds, we need to be careful because of the side effects and that we don't prolong the use. Some of them weaken the adrenals, and we need to be careful about long-term use, liver function, etc. So another aspect is always remember, help a friend in need. I love this. I know it's almost silly. You got to kind of lighten it up sometimes. with this topic. It's serious. Think about it. There's some friends, people you know, this ideal place, you could teach a friend that. If they'll take the time, if you'll just kind of echo some of the things that I brought. You don't have to be an expert. You don't need to be a scientist. You might save someone's life or certainly help them to tolerate life a little bit more. Or if there's a book that you read or a course you've taken or something you're aware of, the best way to learn something is to teach it. The best way to learn something is to be surrounded by people who share that interest. Bring them with you to a seminar. Listen to your home study program together. Go to the webinar to get whatever it might be. So then it's something you can discuss. After this webinar, with family or friends, if any colleagues or whoever are listening along, discuss some of the main points. It's a way to help integrate it. It's a way to make sense of it. It's a way to help a friend. So let's add a little bit more, and I want to add a couple of other pieces to you. Another way to look at what we're talking about is, you may remember the term, the power of the subconscious mind, which is still a relevant term. And if you look at this, I actually borrowed this from, it was a magazine advertisement that appeared in a magazine, 2 pages, and they used this metaphor. I think it was Freud who said something to this effect, that the mind is kind of like an iceberg. And if you look at the top, if you could just focus on the top, what we call the tip of the iceberg, 10%. It's awesome. It's massive, bigger than this building, bigger than the biggest building you know of. And yet it's only 10% of the physical structure. As you can see, it's even more awesome what's below the surface. That iceberg will move over time. The winds are blowing, pushing at the tip of the iceberg, hurricane forces. And yet science finds, and I ask you, what has the most influence on the iceberg and its movement? You might think the wind, but you guys know. The currents, those invisible forces called the currents, because the currents are strong and powerful, just like the wind, but they're pushing on an even more massive wall of ice. Therefore, that's what really controls it. So the tip of the iceberg has been likened to the conscious mind, our critical thinking mind, cognition, the intellect, whereas the 90% factor has been likened to that childlike quality, that child within, the subconscious. It's interesting. If you look at, again, time doesn't allow, but we do a lot of work with biofeedback as part of the basis for the technology in the Silver Method, as part of the basis for my own practice as a training consultant. And if we talk about the 4 principal brainwave patterns, although there are others now that science has discovered, but typically the beta, the alpha, theta, and delta, we find that in our normal course of development, not just psychologically but physiologically, that what has become commonplace associated with meditative states, relaxation states, using a relaxation technology, using the ideal place of relaxation, usually associated with a sleep-like stimmy. I'm simplifying this for you. Interesting enough, children prior to puberty are very naturally, they have not developed the frontal lobes, they have not developed the executive center yet. Physiologically, that has not fully developed. In fact, their brain's not fully developed. But they're naturally in a state of awareness where they learn faster. When children come from another country to, let's say, the US of A, and they learn, who learns the English language faster and more proficiently? Children every time. 30 years later, mom and dad still have an accent. If the family becomes ill, who usually recovers? Who's more resilient? Who bounces back faster? Usually, again, the children, again, prior to puberty. It's been approximated that children learn at a rate of 25 times faster than adults. Their thinking is naturally in this state of awareness. And if you take an EEG and monitor their brainwave activity, it mimics what people go to seminars for to learn how to meditate or come to what we do in the Silver Method, for example, to regain access to that naturally developed state that as we grow older we seem to ignore, we kind of lose sight of, we we grow up, we get real, and we begin to focus more on the intellect. You've heard psychologists suggest that it's too late by the time we reach 5. They've suggested that we're imprinted by the age of 5 about 80% or more of our emotions. Excuse me, one moment. And some have said it's too late by the time they go to kindergarten. I strongly disagree with that. That's erroneous thinking. That's a limiting belief. Because if you can regain access to the subconscious, you can consciously control it. We call it an inner conscious state. You can literally rewire your nervous system. You can change those habit patterns that are deeply ingrained. Again, it's not an overnight process. It's not a quick fix. It does take repetition and reinforcement. With the skill, the technology, you can accelerate the pace, yes. You make it easy because you know what to do. And you can take any habit. You can improve. In sports, it's called, if you've been watching the Olympics, mental rehearsal. Any athlete at an Olympic level or professional level works with sports psychologists or has consulted, and they teach them how to mentally, in the same way I had you think of the ideal place of relaxation, how to mentally rehearse their ideal performance, how to go through their routine, whether it be synchronistic swimming, whether it be diving, whether it be football, hockey, bobsledding. A little aside, by the way, I live in a village called Farmington, Connecticut, and the bronze winner of the bobsled comes from Farmington, Connecticut. In fact, she went to our high school and went to high school with my sons. They know they've been thrilled. In fact, she's been in our home. I don't know her. I don't remember her. It was some time ago. But these people, when they get to that level, they know that the difference between the gold and the bronze, you saw the results if you followed, is a fraction of a second. And what distinguishes a champion from one who's not quite, is often they're physically in top shape, they've got the same training, but is that attitude? Is their inner game? What's going on inside in their subconscious? So back to the arrows on that advertisement. It was a 2-page spread, and I should tell you, just to give some reference. A major auto manufacturer. And the other page, if you could see it, was saying, the first arrow pointing to the top, this is what you pay for. And the second arrow pointing to the 90% below the surface, but this is what you get. And I often in my classes will tell people when they're in a silver method training with me, this is what you get. This is what you pay for, but this is what you get. I mean, it's just like the sky's the limit when you learn to master that. So let's look at it in some other ways. Staying healthy and productive is a theme mentioning. And I'm going to just run through this and offer you some as a technique. Again, please be advised, when we've got, usually I spend 2 days of time, or at least a full day with people, developing this and then practicing it and rehearsing it, not just talking about it to the point where it becomes automatic. So one of the first things is, if you've ever meditated or practiced a relaxation technique, if you've ever worked with hypnosis or self-hypnosis or mindfulness meditation or the Silver Method or what have you, the reason why we all begin with eyelids closed is of our 5 senses, the sensory input to the brain, about 80-86% is through eyes, through sight. By closing the eyelids, we automatically reduce about 80-86% of the sensory input. And that makes it easier to calm down, to defocus, to calm the critical mind. It helps the body to naturally move in the direction of a sleep-like state, alpha and or theta, which is, like I said, very natural. The slow, deep belly breathing. When you read Candace Pert, read Dr. Andrew Weil, drwild.com. He's another one of my heroes. I once sponsored him as a guest speaker when his first book came out in my Boston days. And these people refer to a ton of research that yoga for thousands of years has emphasized. We now know at university level, clinical studies, that slow, deep belly breathing causes it's like internal jogging, can help to increase serotonin levels, can help the body relax, can help increase the blood flow and oxygen to the brain. So I know you know how to breathe. If you listen, if you want to, while you're with me, again, while you're listening, again, as long as you're not driving, allow your eyelids to close and allow a slow, deep breath. Inhale through your nose very slowly. Take your time, as if filling your belly, as if your belly were a balloon. Or if you have a Buddha belly, just fill it. Hold it briefly, and then exhale out your mouth. It's okay to make noise, like you're releasing. And as you do, just release the tensions. Think of some of the, excuse my language, crap of the day. Some of the challenges. Just let it go. Allow another slow, deep breath. Filling your belly nice and easy. Exhaling out your mouth. Excellent. Good job. Allow another slow, deep breath. Feeling your belly. Excellent. Hold it. Exhale, release. And just allow your breath to normalize. Anytime you need to relax, focus on your breathing, slow, deep belly breathing, until it becomes habit. If you talk to a psychologist or psychiatrist, they observe when people are in anxiety mode, depressed, they don't breathe properly. The breathing is very shallow in the chest because it affects the physiology. It's a way to change the physiology. It's a way where you don't have to think so that you take control of the body. All you have to do is remember to breathe. Now, if your eyelids are still closed, remember that ideal place of relaxation. I'm going to pause briefly, and when you hear my voice again, you'll relax even more so. And I'm going to allow you time to think of, imagine, as if to project yourself to your ideal place of relaxation. Meaning, if you were there, what would you feel, hear, see, think? Recall, if you're at the beach, in the tub, walking through the woods. Is there any sound in the background? Maybe birds singing in the distance, the rustling of leaves, the waves breaking. And I'll pause now briefly, and just let me allow you about 30 seconds just to experience it. Relax, stay relaxed. And again, with your eyelids closed, allow me to count. We call it a countdown. Now you can count on your own, 100 to 1, 50, 25 to 1. I'll just count slowly. And by the time I reach count of 1, you'll have experienced an even deeper, more relaxed state of mind and body. 10, 9, 0 going deeper, 8, 7, 6, deeper and deeper, 5, 4, 3, deeper and deeper, 2, 1. You're now experiencing a deeper, more relaxed state of mind and body. How good it feels to progressively relax deeper and deeper. And know that every day in every way, you're truly getting better and better. Every day in every way, as you practice this simple little exercise, it will get progressively easier. You become more proficient. To help you relax even more so, I will call your attention to different parts of your body. Relax your scalp. Relax your forehead. Relax your eyelids. Relax your face. Relax your tongue. Relax your throat area, externally and internally. How good it feels to progressively relax deeper and deeper. Relax your shoulders, arms, and hands. Relax your back. Relax your abdominal area and chest area, externally and internally. Relax your hip and waist area. Relax your thighs. Allow this feeling to continue to move slowly throughout your body as you relax your knees, relax your calves and feet. How good it feels to progressively relax deeper and deeper. You may now, while in this quiet, relaxed state, take a moment to reflect on tomorrow. What will you be doing tomorrow? Work, home, activities. And take a moment to imagine and or visualize some desired outcomes, positive outcomes. If you have a business meeting, you can take a moment to imagine how will you know it turned out well. Shaking hands, contract signed, a compliment. If you're a teacher, you're in school, students paying attention, understanding you, you're clear, you're direct, you're making a good connection with them. If you're talking to a dear friend or a loved one, if you're making a sales presentation, I will pause while you allow yourself to think of some ideal end results. Excellent. Good job. You can practice this on your own. Now, when you're ready, please open your eyelids. Be awake, be alert. If I were in the room with you, I could see that you're there. And that was very brief. I didn't time it. It was maybe 5 minutes. We just kind of rolled into it, and I felt inspired. I hope that you found that helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you found it calming. Even if you just relaxed a little bit, it will progressively get easier. Please practice this. I have it on the screen now. This is basically what we did as a technique. Please understand, I don't want to make too light of this and oversimplify it, again, because usually we would repeat this, over the course of a day time in training. It is what it takes. It takes some, perhaps you had some difficulty. You were being overly critical, worrying about something. Perhaps you had difficulty thinking of those positive outcomes. Welcome to the club. It's a skill. It's a skill that takes time, and as you develop it, you become more proficient. So it takes practice with that. And this is what I said. So if you want to take this to the next level, I highly recommend follow through. It would be well worth your time. I'm blessed to be part of a team globally. My website is on the bottom. You can contact me. The global website there. We're all over the world because I know people, we have so many people from all over the world listening. I would recommend that you practice this in the early morning. Is an easy time to practice it because you're still kind of there. You haven't had your coffee yet. You can remain in bed or sit in a chair after a meal because your body's digesting, or just before sleep where we're winding down. 5 minutes is good, 10 minutes is better, 15 minutes is excellent. If you have a health concern, I would highly recommend 15 minutes 3 times a day. And if you look at, quote, Dr. Andrew Newberg, Mark Robert Waldman, as neuroscientists, they've actually suggested that when you practice a relaxation exercise like this, if you look at Dr. Herbert Benson's work in the relaxation response, now neuroscience is actually finding that they have suggested that we might be able to improve the health of the brain and the neuroplasticity by as much as 25% practicing with relaxation exercises, that this is healthy for the brain. If you practice time at the mental rehearsal, they have found in their brain imaging techniques, again, read their work, they've actually found a noticeable difference that if you do that positive mental rehearsal, if you just practice feeling compassion and feeling hope and optimism for the day, it's one of the healthiest things. They say it's the number 1 healthiest thing you can do for your brain. And again, I could go on and on and on. To me, it's fascinating because in my early days, I didn't know how to explain this other than I knew that it worked.
Ken?
Yes?
Could you explain what neuroplasticity means?
That's a good question because I use it and I don't understand it completely myself. It has to do with the health and the resilience of the brain. It has to do with the strength of the brain and its functioning. And that's a very oversimplified explanation. I don't feel very qualified to explain that because if you read like in Newberg's work, and they don't even explain it in detail.
Wow. Okay.
So I made a classic error in even bringing up that term without being, and I thank you for for calling me on that, and I apologize to the group. But the gist of what I said is accurate. I'm just not explaining the dynamics of it. Thank you, David.
Thanks, guys.
Anyway, so we just went through this relaxation process, direct meditation, and the interest in the hopes of encouraging you for the benefits. In my opinion, it's the best investment. Nowadays, people are counting their dollars, their pennies. We're concerned. I hear people say, I don't know if I can afford it. I would say, can you afford not to take the time and to acquire the resources to develop this? I mean no disrespect, but if you're not, and if you're falling victim to distress, classically we're just going to lose it. Some of the benefits, blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, immune system, headaches, we sleep better. All these things improve dramatically. It's a natural byproduct to working with dynamic meditation. It is like the fountain of youth. Again, if you read some of their work, they're saying that we prematurely, people who regularly meditate do not show their age. And there have actually been studies where they measure someone's chronological age to their biological age, and they're not aging relative to the rest, what you would think they would based on their age. So the so-called fountain of youth has a lot more to do. You'll have more energy, more vitality. That exercise we just did, I did this with one of our groups, and he told me he fell asleep and like an hour later, and I hope somebody on our call didn't do that too, and if it did, it's not unusual because the lateness of the hour for some people, you get so relaxed. But usually when you open your eyes, you're like wide awake and alert. You'll find you'll be more productive. I will personally guarantee you that you take time, 5, 10, 15 minutes in the middle of the day. Do you remember they were called power naps? Some of our presidents take them. There have been major articles talking about if businesses, when executives do this, sleeping on the job, they made a joke of it. They find that they're actually more productive. They get more done in less time. They're less prone to accidents. Again, if you're in business, you can't afford not to have a handle on this. The inner peace, the balance, even the synchronicity. It's like kind of being in the zone. Synchronicity almost seems like good luck. It's like things come our way more easily. We have more success in manifesting our goals. So I'd like to, as time allows, that being said, let's go to one other piece. Well, actually, there's a couple more pieces, but one that will add here to this aspect. We've been talking about stress. If I go back to Dr. Hans Selye, he defined eustress as positive stress and negative stress as distress. Eustress might be if you're driving in your car, moving along, and all of a sudden somebody, you're in a, let's say, a parking lot, a crowded mall or parking plaza, or on the road, and somebody comes in quickly into your lane and you nearly have a collision. Well, you get that jolt of adrenaline, and you quickly what? Steer away, apply the brakes. You do something to avoid the danger. That's positive stress. We need that. If somebody is abusing you verbally and you speak up and say, hey, this is unacceptable, that's positive stress. Distress is when we become victimized, when we internalize it, when we repress it and suppress it. And our reactions and our attitudes are reflected in that. They're the key, because our thinking and the words we use, both the thinking, the feelings, and the words, are triggers. But what they are is our brain is very responsive to symbols. They become, our words, our language in communicating with people become, if you will, a reflection on how we're really feeling and thinking about it. For example, people say, this job is going to be the death of me yet. I hate work. That's a powerful statements. And you know, again, neuroscientists have found that when we feel those negative feelings and we use that negative language, that internal dialogue, it's actually unhealthy for the brain. And they're actually able to compare that versus, you know, the more positive expression. So I call it positive communication in that we want to remain calm even when it seems hopeless. And one way to do that is to manage our internal dialogue. So a stress reducer, I call it power communication. In the Silver class, we spend quite a bit of time with people, in the life system especially, helping people to heal their critical voice, to heal that critical inner dialogue. Managing the inner dialogue is vital to our success. Because if we're using a relaxation technique, if we're working on a reframing technique, if we're learning some great information, but we're thinking, I can't do it, I hate this, I'll never be able to do it, we're using all this negative language, I'm not going to take time to, because you know, we'll be here for hours and hours. It's so basic and so simple. In my experience, most people overlook it. If we are not managing our communications, especially that internal voice, the inner dialogue, if we do not heal it and begin to reframe our language, so instead of saying, I can't, I'm having difficulty. Instead of saying, don't slam the door, I mean, like right now, everybody, whatever you do, don't think of monkeys in the room with you. Please, don't think of monkeys throwing bananas. And probably you've got images of monkeys all around. So I actually miscommunicated. It's not what I wanted you to do. It would have been more effective if I said, listen to me, pay attention, close the door gently. You get the idea? I mean, this is just some. So one of the solutions is an expression, I teach you this, called cancel, cancel. It's a ridiculous sounding expression. And that's the point. It's like a red flag. If you find yourself catching and using negative language, it's not going to go away because you agree with me. You've got to retrain. It's a way to retrain the habit we have. Optimism is a learned response. Pessimism is also learned. Read Dr. Martin Seligman's Learned Optimism. He makes a classic point about it's learned. And this is a way that we have since 1966 been helping people to change this stinking thinking, to start correcting that critical voice that challenges us, that says, I can't do this, I'll never do that, and I'm not good enough, and oh my God, and you want to stop? In your head, you just do it internally, thinking cancel, cancel, and reframe it. Think of a more positive expression. You can reframe it by asking, what can I learn if you're feeling something? Express it in a positive way. So really what the intent is to find out what's going on and what is it that you want. Please again, guys, excuse me if it seems like I'm moving along because we could go on and spend more time, and we would. I wanted to at least just give you an idea, a sense that think of this. Spend some time on your own. What are some of the words? What are some of the expressions? Is it really that you can't do something, or you have yet to learn how to do it? There's a big difference. Can't closes the door. Are you trying to be on time? Are you going to try to relax and use the technique? Or are you making a commitment? You ever hear the definition of commitment? It's like the difference between ham and eggs. If you look at ham and eggs, the chicken was involved in laying the eggs, but the pig was committed. Commitment is an attitude that says stay is not an option. So if you find yourself, I can't relax, or I'll try to make the time to use this dynamic relaxation exercise, cancel. I'll make the time. Love yourself. Allow yourself the opportunity. It's worth it. And as you begin to feel and experience the benefits, that by itself will encourage you to do more. I will admit to you, one of my frustrations is I meet so many people, they go through trainings, and they do nothing with it, and they wonder why. Or they read all these books. And that's part of what I'm enjoying about doing these webinars, and I thank, again, David and Sherry for inviting me, because it's a way to support you. It's a way to maybe remind you of things you know already in a different format, because we learn by repetition. Repetition, repetition is what makes it permanent. So if I may move on a little bit to this triumvirate to health. This is from a Dr. William DeMont, and he, if you've ever heard, he talks about nutrition, exercise, and sleep as three of the necessary factors in our life to promote health and well-being. We are what we eat. We know the body's meant to move. We do need physical exercise. Physical activity at any age is very necessary. And perhaps even more necessary is sleep. And Dr. DeMont, who's the founder of the American Sleep Disorder Association, he's been around for at least, that I know of, 40 years. Been looking at his work all these years. He said that most people have a deficit of not enough sleep. I mean, think about it. People are working longer hours, getting up earlier, going to sleep later, and what's suffering is sleep. Our teenagers, any educator knows this, and yet the system has not changed. Having them get up for beginning class at 7 in the morning, it goes against their natural biological cycles. They don't go to bed early. Anyone here on the call, you have teenagers, they'll stay up late, they get up early, and they're like walking zombies. And if it continues, a deficit builds up. Everybody says they know somebody who only gets 4 or 5 hours sleep, and they're okay. According to Dr. DeMont, if you look, they've got a deficit, and it will show up as a disorder in their life. Maybe headaches, maybe pain, aches and pains in the body, maybe negative emotions, feelings of anxiety. That one way or the other, it will show up in their lives, nervous disorders, etc. So this is another thing we spend a great deal of time in helping people to re-educate their bodies to sleep normally, naturally, and without the need of drugs. I have had people with 10, 20, 30 years insomnia who are now sleeping like babies. In fact, in some of the hospitals in the Hartford area who are my clients, when I've gone into their wellness centers, I designed a program called Sleep Like a Baby, because it's just that important. If we're not getting enough sleep, we're not as tolerant to stress. If we're not getting enough sleep, it distresses the body. So, if I may add, when we look at normal natural sleep and dream cycles, this is what I was alluding to. Please note that this chart needs to be updated, because science talks now about gamma waves, much higher than beta, and slower than delta, called epsilon. But if I work with just this and keeping it simple, this goes back to early 1900s again, with the development of the EEGs, the electroencephalograph. We know, and these become commonplace in hospitals, that beta represents our normal waking state, again, keeping it simple, alpha and theta, light sleep, dreaming, delta, or slow wave sleep. And that all during the night we go through normal rhythmic cycles of sleep. At first, as we go off into sleep, we go very quickly into slow wave sleep and very little time dreaming. And yet as the night progresses to the second 90-minute cycle, they're each about 90 minutes long, we don't go nearly as deep, a little more time dreaming. Next cycle, we don't go nearly as deep, we spend even more time dreaming. Oftentimes REM, which is rapid eye movement, although there's non-REM alpha also. And in the early morning hours, most of our time is usually very light sleep, typical of alpha, which is usually why for people who are remembering their dreams, the most common time to remember a dream is first thing in the morning. Well, this is normal rhythmic cycles of sleep. And when you're practicing with your relaxation technique, it will help you to enjoy normal rhythmic sleep. If you're distressed, if you've consumed excessive amount of alcohol, although the excessive alcohol will put you right to sleep, the research shows that what we do is we crash, and instead of rhythmically cycling through these, we stay in slow waves, and they're not tolerating it, and they've gotten to that breaking point. They feel like they're drugged. They crash, and they feel like they can sleep forever. They're always tired. If you were to monitor their brainwave patterns during that, you notice they're mostly getting slow wave sleep. When people use diet pills or stimulants in excess, when they wear off, the research shows that they don't go through rhythmic cycles of sleep. It interferes. essential that we get rhythmic, healthy cycles of sleep. Many of the sleep medications put people out, but they interfere in the normal rhythmic cycles of sleep. They get mostly slow-wave sleep. There's a body of research that's been going on since the 1960s, universities all around, that basically monitored that it's essential that we have normal rhythmic sleep. I mean, again, we'll be here for hours, but the research is there for that. So again, friendly reminder that relaxation process that we were talking about before is a way for you to avoid these dangers of cheating on sleep. Some of the effects of sleep deprivation: it wreaks havoc on our hormones. Cortisol levels increase, prolactin decreases in the body, immune system is weakened, that's what all that means, which can lead to long-term health problems. Memory is impaired. Everybody jokes, oh, I'm having a senior moment, when really it's a stress moment, because the first thing that goes is cognition and memory, those frontal lobes. Even fat in the body increases, and there are reasons for that. You know, there's actually something called the stress belly. And one of the things with the, David, can you still hear? I'm getting a message that we're having difficulties with the audio conference.
I can.
Yep, okay, it says the connection with the server has been lost. Please check your network connection.
I can hear you loud and clear. Folks, can you all hear him? Just type in your box. Yep, they can hear you.
Wow. I'm getting a message on the computer. All right, thank you, guys. Excuse me again. Even a question of possible brain cell loss. Dr. Ivan Koto, University of Chicago School of Medicine, did work there. Now a lot of this research has been updated. Performance and motivation gets impaired. Poor human interaction. I mean, I could go on and on. Risk of depression. Less energy. Really, the question is all this worth it? We need to take that time. Again, the best investment you could ever make for your life. I don't care how you do it. I hope just one day that you take the Silver program. I hope maybe one day I can do work for your company as part of this, introducing you to me. However, there's a lot of great people out there doing wonderful work. Mindfulness meditation, TM, whatever your thing may be, please do something. It is essential, because if you're not taking the time, you run the risk of being left behind. I mean, there's things for that. So the benefits or the need, value of consistent natural sleep is, just to turn it around, reframe it, it's preventative of health problems and remedial. You'll notice a lot of those aches and pains disappearing. You'll notice a sense of rejuvenation, accelerating the healing in the body. Even David's an MD. You've had so many. I'm really honored. I'm not an MD. I don't have a PhD, and most aren't. And they'll tell you the best advice is get good rest. You know, take this and get rest. You release the negative effects of stress. You enhance your emotional intelligence, which means it'll be easy to be caring and compassionate with people. You'll be more patient, more understanding. You have clearer thinking. You'll perform better. You'll actually have more time because you'll have less accidents, less omissions. It's an incubator for wisdom. You'll be more likely to have ideas, innovative ideas, because you're thinking more clearly. Improve your, I mean, again, the list goes on. You prevent overwhelm, which some have called the freeze, and you'll sleep like a baby. You like that picture? This is our object. For those of you having trouble sleeping, we want you sleeping like this. For that.
Ken?
Yes.
It does seem like we are seeing dangers of cheating on sleep right now. What slide do you have in front of you?
Sleep like a baby.
Okay, that's probably where the problem was, because we're still stuck on dangers of.
You know, get to some of this. Again, the breathing, the ideal place of relaxation you can use, the countdown, the relaxation process. If you have difficulty sleeping, I highly recommend that you do that at night in bed, closing your eyes, slow, deep breathing, go through parts of your body, just think the word relax, count back 100 to 1, think of the ideal place. And that in itself will help you start naturally building that. Make sure you get a little bit of exercise. You know, again, there's a whole piece I would do normally with people. Is that on your screen? Our guy at the mouse handing his weights. Are you seeing that on the screen, David?
We can see that.
Okay, good. And then here's some of the benefits. I mean, I know you folks have heard this with that, but it's a good friendly reminder that all the different things, ways, we could with this. And I want to start closing with, you want to make sure you smile at least once a day. And you know that it's interesting, I'm not recalling the details, but there are specific details that the muscles in the face are directly connected to the brain, and that when we frown, it has an adverse effect on the brain by comparison to when we smile. And if you want to help a speaker and you're sitting in front of them, smile. If you don't want to help them, and I hope you don't do this, sit there, frown, fold your arms. And unless if that person's a professional, they'll know how to avoid getting sucked into that. But there's nothing like having a smile, and professional speakers will often tell you that when they scan an audience, they look for the smiling faces. It's very reassuring, and it's very calming. So if you're dealing with people who are angry and upset, speak softly, speak calmly, smile, and that will help to calm them down. Some of the work we do in helping people with conflict resolution for that. So even with your friends, it's a way that we can help each other by remembering to smile and offer that encouragement. So once again, I want to thank all of you for listening and for having me here. I put back on the screen my contact information. I invite your comments. If I may be of service to you, I would love to hear from you. My voice, the phone number's there, 860-674-1009. You can email me at info@kencoscia.com. If, however, you're interested in personal development, I personally serve Connecticut, Boston, and Seattle. However, there's an outstanding team of fellow Silva instructors in, last count I heard, about 111 different nations globally. I have many of their links on my website. That's right there, silvamethodct.com. It's chock full of information, very useful information, course description, what we do, research. There are even some home study programs. If you're at distance, if you're looking, you're more prone to wanting to study in the privacy of your home and not come to a seminar, which frankly is the ideal way to do it. Then on that silvamethodct.com, there's something called the Mind Body or Silva Mind Body Healing button. If you click on to Silva Mind Body Healing button on my website, there's several home study programs that are now available. They're excellent. I have wonderful, wonderful feedback from people, and they're very, very experiential. They're not just intellectual information. They're exercises like what we're doing here now, but many of them have like 10 or more CDs, DVDs, depending for that. If you know someone or you yourself in your business or organization is interested in a customized on-site wellness prevention type program, then kencoscia.com, that's the website where I specialize, because often outside of the Silva circles, I'm contracted as a training consultant to go into a situation where they're not interested specifically in the Silva program, but they'd like to learn some tools or resources of emotional intelligence or stress management, or I have some specialized programs of helping people prevent overwhelm through accelerated learning, through sleeping better, etc. But those are some of the things that I would invite your attention to. It would be great to hear from you. So I'm going to, it says it's been reestablished. Apparently our connection's been going in and out. I hope everybody's seen that. I want to thank everybody. Yep.
I actually took it back from you, Ken, because we were not seeing the slides, last slide, so I put it up now.
So I want to thank David for putting on the slide. I would ask you to please, folks, copy down that information. If you're a member, you're going to get a complimentary download from David anyway, but copy down. And again, the silvamethodct.com would be for personal development, mind, body, spirit connection, where the kencoscia.com is more oriented toward organizations, businesses, very specific customized on-site programs with that. And you've got the voicemail. The voice where you want to contact me by phone, email. It'd be great to hear from you. I would love even some feedback, because this is, we've been doing more and more programs like this, but really for me, I'm more used to doing things live. So it's a little challenging not being able to see the audience's face or having that direct, immediate contact. I say thank you. Thank you for having me. I deeply appreciate the opportunity. I hope that you've had some value from this. More importantly, I hope that you'll take some of these simple lessons and work with them and just get wonderful benefits. And I hope one day that you'll take it to the next level and pursue it for that. And maybe one day we'll get a chance to meet you, and if not, vicariously through one of my colleagues. So may I turn it back over to David and to Sherry and say, again, thank you guys.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. This has been fantastic. I mean, we had people staying, we can tell from the software how people, how much interest that your webinar is having just by, like I said, the software here. And this is, people appear to have been totally absorbed in what you were saying, and they stayed on through it all. So this has been really, really good. Thank you again. And I know you mentioned something about not being an MD or a healthcare professional. And yes, we really are honored to have so many healthcare professionals helping us do what we do. But the absolute bottom line, what we are after is helping people be more intelligent about their lives and what they do. And anybody who can help us achieve that goal in an expert, confident, intelligent way would really fits into what we're doing. And so again, thank you for taking the time to prepare this. I know this was meant to be it's actually prepared to be like a weekend seminar, and you've crammed it into about an hour and a half, but you've done a great job doing that.
Well, thank you. My pleasure. And maybe one day we can do some work with some of the pieces on work that I do with intuition. And I also think of myself as a doctor of prevention. That's really my mission. Right.
Well, this has been great. This has been really good. Folks, like as Ken mentioned, the recordings and the slides and handouts will be available after the webinar. Just email us. Again, they're free for members. And by the way, we just want to mention again that on Monday we are hiking the prices. Well, I wouldn't call it hiking the prices, but we are doubling pretty much the price that is paid for membership. And in March, we will begin to start charging for 1 or 2 webinars. Most of our webinars will be free, but there will be some from here to there that we charge for. Again, those will be free for members. So there are a lot of advantages to becoming a member, and the prices go up on Monday. If you have any questions, please type in the chat box to the right of your screen so we can start asking Ken those questions. We already have some comments in the questions box, excuse me, not the chat box, but the questions box. We already have some comments. I'm going to read them out, but if you have any more, just go ahead and type them in. Okay, Joan has left, but she said, I appreciate the input on the steps to relaxation and planning through the day. I hope that's right.
Yep.
I will definitely incorporate them into my life. Thank you for a wonderful program. I appreciate your compassionate way in presenting this material.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you.
I agree with that too. Okay, Nanette asks, standard medical education includes sleep deprivation. How would it affect them? This is new. Nanette, are you sure this education includes sleep deprivation?
I think,
for what? Go ahead.
I think what he's referring to is medical students are sleep deprived. Their schedule is so demanding.
Right. And it doesn't stop when they become doctors. It gets a lot worse too. I think in some areas there's some legislation to limit the amount of uninterrupted time the doctors are working. I think they're trying to put some humanity back into medical training and care.
One of my clients is a physicians group, and then more than a few of my friends are physicians who work in the OR, and it's unbelievable. I mean, they're under the gun for such long, extended periods of time. And then the students, some of these friends, their children now, and just going through that, and nurses, I mean, changing constantly the schedule. I mean, it's really counterproductive to these people and their health.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Mara, who's going to be on, she actually was meant to present last week, but she had an injury. But Mara is going to be on probably in May. She's a gerontologist, and she's going to be speaking about adventurous aging. She has a comment here saying that the silver method is still being taught in Texas, in case others might be interested, that she took a course in high school. The earliest, does that date her? Does that date her a little bit?
It does. Well, actually, Texas is the headquarters. Laredo, Texas. It's a border town, and we have classes in Austin, in Houston. We have classes in San Antonio. You know, we're all over. So Texas is where we began.
Is that where, so that's where Silver is from himself?
And that's where our headquarters are.
Got it. Got it.
You know.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was it. I finished. That's where Silver International works out of. That's where our international headquarters are, in Laredo, Texas.
Laredo, Texas. All right. And Mara says the earlier the better in age. It lasts a lifetime. I guess she's saying the earlier you started, the better it lasts for you. Okay. She says she takes 2 naps 20 minutes each day, and this increases the life expectancy unbelievably. Okay, thank you, Mara. I'm sure you're going to give us some more information about that when you come on to speak about adventurous aging.
Nice.
Oh, well, I think this covered it, really. I mean, it has been very clear, very straightforward, very informative, and there really isn't much to ask about that. I mean, you've really made it very understandable, and people really appreciate this. There are lots of thank yous from the attendees, obviously, because they really appreciate this, and we do as well. So, Ken, thank you so much. You want to give us some closing thoughts?
May the rest of your life be the best of your life. That was a saying from Jose Silva that I'm going to borrow. May the rest of your life be the best of your life.
The rest of your life be the best. I like that.
I like to say that you know, welcome to a whole new beginning, so to speak. Because one of the greatest discoveries we'll ever make is the potential of our mind, our brain. I mean, we're still in our infancy in what we understand about the brain. And the whole point of this is that we are learning so that we can reduce some of the conflict, get along better, create some harmony in the workplace, in our homes, on the planet. I mean, part of the mission statement of our organization is we want to enrich the planet by empowering the individual, and we're doing it one person at a time. So for me, this is a lot more of a movement than it is, you know, just seminars, if you hear what I'm saying. The seminars are the vehicle we use to provide people with the technology and the help to be able to affect this in their lives. And because ignorance doesn't save us. And unfortunately, if we don't understand the process, we fall victim to it. So truly, may the rest of your life be the best of your life. And I look forward for more with you guys.
Well, we look forward to it as well. And a lot more thank yous. I really enjoyed this. Thank you. It was great. So we have no choice than to get you back, Ken.
Well, thank you.
Oh, we appreciate it. Well, we're going to end it here, and I'm going to say a good night to everyone. And join us again next week. We have quite a few. Actually, I just got a text tonight from one of our really good presenters talking about. He's going to be talking on Monday about cancer and nutrition, what you need to take into your body during cancer treatment so you can have a better chance of surviving. So you need to come back on Monday for that. And then, of course, we have lots of great presentations throughout the month of March. Have a great night, and God bless.